We're gonna go into the media, and PBS was going to do a series where they were going to call all these prominent scientists among the 6,500 and have them, say why SDI is such a stupid idea, that it should not be implemented. These Star Wars unrealistic, it's going to ruin our country. And Marshall Institute, these three scientists said, we're going to go to all the media and we are going to write a letter to all PBS stations, all public television, and threaten that if you give their opinion but not ours, we give us equal time. That's the fairness doctrine. Now, giving equal time to 6,500 people versus 3 people, I don't know what kind of fairness doctrine that is. Now realize, if these 3 people were ordinary scientists and say, give us equal time, they'll slap on their face and get the hell out of here, right? But these were not ordinary people. They had government behind them, they had connections, they had money, they had corporations behind them. So they threatened all television stations with lawsuits that if we don't get equal time, you are violating the fairness doctrine, and as a result, you may be liable for what you do. When they use the word liable, they know lawsuit is coming. What was the result? This tactic called fairness doctrine was successful because very few stations aired that program. Most stations backed off. So see how the media campaign started way back that had influenced the minds of Americans. The second tactic, which is basically means the same thing, it's called the balance tactic. We said there is no balance in the media, and they invoke the fairness principle that journalists come out of school with. One of the things about journalists is that when you go to a journalism school, one of the things they tell you, you go out in the world, you do not report bias, you do not report opinions of people, you always take opinions of both parties because you are out there to speak the truth, represent both parties. In principle, that is right. But in some situations, it kind of doesn't make sense. Then one scientist is threatening the other 6,500 and he gets the equal. And on top of that, there is the fear of litigation. There is also a problem with the journalists. A lot of them who do certain kind of reporting, such as science reporting, they do not have much of a background in science or understanding of the subject matter. I can tell you from my personal insight and knowledge, direct knowledge, someone who has some background in biological sciences, majority of them are pretty clueless about physical sciences. People who study physical sciences, they seem to not know much about biological sciences. That's one of the big problems with science, because everything has become very, very, very specialized nowadays. And public has a misconception that, oh, he's a scientist, he has the answers. Meanwhile, he knows what he studied, but he is clueless about anything outside. He will have some general idea, better idea than the general public, but overall, he's pretty ignorant. He could be as ignorant as you and I about a subject matter. Let alone journalists who are 10 times worse. Some of them are clueless. So what happened was something amazing. Wall Street, New York Times, LA Times, all of these places, they got into the fairness doctrine. So all this reporting was the popular stuff, what people believe, the challenges that being made. And very few people were reporting actually what the scientific community is saying. And it's been happening since then. So there was a guy who kind of did a research on this to see how the media was reporting this. And they found out that 52% of the reporting done in prestigious media such as New York Times, LA Times, they were giving equal time to those 3 people, their ideas, and the 6,500 people. Only 1/3 of the genuine science was reported by the journalist, because of the fear of lawsuits as well as the fairness doctrine, a principle which they believe in, and for the right reason. And a lot of these journalists didn't know that, yes, this is fairness, but they didn't know the number, that on one side there were 6,500 people saying something. So unfortunately, science is different from social sciences. If you think about it, if you have a view or opinion about something, whether gays should be allowed to marry, or any issue of very sensitive social nature, some of these issues are very complicated. And you can have 5 different opinions. And it's kind of fair that everybody's opinion gets a voice. But in science, it doesn't work that way. Science has found a fact, it has proven a fact, that should be reported, rather than 10 people giving different opinions, especially those people who don't have a background in the subject matter. These same scientists that I'm talking about, they were also originally, some of them were involved in the Manhattan Project. So it's the continuation of the same thing, Cold War. We do not want communism to come here. If we start regulating, we're going to become a communist country or a socialist country. So defeat communism, the fear, the paranoia that we're going to lose our capitalistic values, that goes on from Second World War, from Manhattan Project into SDI. And when Cold War goes away, that issue becomes the global warming, the same tactics they use. Now, irony is that at the same time, when Marshall Institute was invoking the principle of fairness doctrine, Reagan government was actually in the process of dismantling fairness doctrine. Because Reagan government was saying that we need to eliminate this fairness doctrine, but because it interferes with the public communications and the freedom of the media, let them market decide, and people say what they want to say, and let them report the way they want to report. Because in a very subtle sense, if you think about it, the fairness doctrine is also kind of a regulation. It's also control. So Reagan government actually wanted to get rid of it. 1989, the Cold War ended. If you remember, I don't know, was it 1989 or 90 when they were knocking down that wall? The Cold War ended. Now you would have thought that the Marshall Institute should go away now. No, it didn't. They said, okay, our goal is to not allow government regulation and protect our freedom. So now they're going to apply or employ the same strategy or the same tactics on the global warming issue, because this is becoming a hot topic. What is the technique? Whenever someone challenges you that tobacco causes cancer, when the science is preliminary or the public doesn't yet know that the science is already has determined a fact, the first tactic is to raise a loud voice and say, there's no proof that tobacco causes cancer. There's no proof that there's global warming. You always start with, there is no proof. This is all a hoax. This is the biggest deception ever. You start with that. When more and more data comes and reputable scientists say, no, there is a proof, then you change the tactic a little bit. You say, yeah, okay, there is some proof, but you know what? Show to me that it's anthropogenic. It's not anthropogenic. In other words, there's global warming, but people didn't caused it. So you shift your tactic a little bit along with what's being said, or whatever is winning the war. And then you move on, and if it has been proven and too many people are saying, scientists, that it is anthropogenic, then you say, okay, well, it could be anthropogenic, but it's not an alarm, it's not that bad. Our technology can take care of it. We can adapt to that. Do we really have the technology to adapt? You remember Katrina? Did we have the technology to stop that? Do you remember the forest fires in California, out of control? We don't know what to do. Do we have that technology? So we always have to remember when nature hits, but you mess with nature, it will hit back. When it hits back, then we don't know what to do. And I can tell you, no matter how much technology we develop, nature is always going to be very powerful. You heard the concepts of supervolcanoes, and there has been in the last 1.5 million years, Yellowstone Park has erupted twice, and there are other supervolcanoes, and there is an understanding and pretty much good science to prove by looking at the data, analyzing molecules, the earth crust, that some of these catastrophes can pretty much eliminate life from the planet. And you have to start all over again. You have to go back to 5000 BC and dig wells for water, and there's no light and no technology, no computers. You have to start all over again if some humanity is left over. So let's not underestimate nature. But this is the next argument to use. It's not that bad. And if it does happen, our technology will take care of it. And then the final tactic is, you're going to ruin the economy by talking about the windmills and the solar energy and this and that. You know, it's going to cost too much money. And some people have done analysis. It has to be studied scientifically what the cost is. Is the cost is going to be offset? Maybe there are some benefits. It's going to renew the economy. But think of the World War II. How much it cost? But what it did, it revived the economy. We were the richest country after the Second World War. We were never richer, ever, either before or after. So economy, the dollar bills, it's basically, it's not economy, it does not represent real economy. Real economy is us, the people, their work, their motivation, their spirit. That's what determines what the deficit is going to be with the government 10, 20 years later. It's not how much dollar, but that's paper. It's not different from any other paper, is it? So that's not real economy. It's very important to understand that paper deficit, these concepts are abstract concepts. They do not represent economy. Economy is represented by the motivation of people, the ingenuity, the innovation, the ideas. So has anyone done analysis what the cost is going to be? Maybe actually it's going to work in our favor. I don't know the answer. And I'm not claiming I know the answers. And I'm not claiming that there is research out there. What I'm simply talking about is these are some of the tactics that they use. In 1995, IPCC, which I mentioned before, Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, their assessment came out, and it was the report was compiled by Dr. Benjamin Centers, and this was the first time actually IPCC said, based on what's been going on for 50, 60 years, research, getting expert opinions from all over the world, that now we conclusively know that temperatures are rising, that this is a real problem. And 40 prominent scientists from all over the world signed that report. At this time, Fred Singer, who is actually as a physicist, is a prominent physicist, he attacked that IPCC report. He said that IPCC, they have fudged with the data, they changed the words, and they have messed with it, and the evidence that is against global warming has been removed from there. So he started a mass media campaign that this is a fraud, this is a deception. And we will tell you in a minute who was Singer. It turns out that Dr. Center actually responded to his accusation in Wall Street. He said that whatever was removed or changed, it is true it was changed, but it was changed after peer review. Now let me give you just 1 minute spiel on peer review, because I'm a scientist from background. Peer review process is a standard process where when a claim is made and research is done, and you make a claim and you claim that something is a fact, it has to be peer reviewed. In other words, you have to present yourself before a body of other experts in the same field, and they question you. And they present other data or other research that's available and say, hey, you know, this thing contradicts your report or your research paper, it contradicts. And then when the final information is given out to public, or within the